Iran nuclear deal is well known. Can you walk through the rationale for the decision to initially pursue the deal and then perhaps the decision to actually execute and sign the deal?
So we had been pursuing a two-track strategy against the Iranians. One was to ramp up the pressure, primarily through sanctions, but also through our force posture in the region, through intelligence activities and other forms of pressure as well. And the second track was to say, if the Iranians wanted to come to the table to cut a deal that would put a lid on their program, we would be open to have that conversation. So it was pressure, one track, diplomacy, the other track.
As a policymaker, how do you know when to bend on principles, and how much do you know to bend?
No deal in diplomacy is ever going to be perfect. You don't realize until the president actually asks the question, should we do this or not, that it's game time. You know, it's no longer kind of working through things, let's see what we can get. Now it's either yes or no. At that moment, all of the things that you don't love about a given agreement come out in Technicolor. All of a sudden, all you can see are the places in which you didn't get the maximum of what you sought and where things aren't perfect. And being able to make that decision to recommend to the president that we go ahead and do this deal required stepping back from the anxiety, the emotion, the nerve-wracking idea that maybe we were going to screw this thing up, and actually systematically running a cost-benefit analysis. And the hard thing about a decision like that is that somebody can always come along, and many did, and say, you could have got a better deal. And you have to say, am I prepared to stand here and say, look people in the eye and say, I believe this is a good deal and it's as good as we are going to do right now.
Can you help us understand the delicacy of the policymaking process and also the implementation of that policy?
It's hard for a layperson to see the delicacy of a policymaking process until it totally breaks down. And then you recognize, oh gosh, I sort of miss what we had. Yeah. In the case, for example, of this order on refugees and immigration, in a rigorous, serious, evidence-based policy process built on kind of core American values, you'd ask a lot of hard questions. What is going to be the human impact? What's going to happen in the case of the green card holder, of the person who's already got their visa stamped and is on the plane over here? How is this actually going to play out so that it doesn't result in widespread religious discrimination? You would ask these questions and you would not roll out the policy until you had solid answers to them. A lot of the times people talk about sweating the details, policy wonks. I'm a policy wonk, and you know, I can probably bore people to tears talking about the specifics of a given issue. But real life is lived in these specifics. When a person shows up at John F. Kennedy Airport having served the United States of America in Iraq for years and is detained and told, we're putting you on a plane to go home, that's not just a detail. There has to be some amount of care and credibility and solidity behind decision-making.
What is your interpretation of the goals of their current policymaking process?
You know, it's interesting. There's a vigorous debate in the national security community about how much unpredictability can actually be a strategic advantage. For smaller countries who don't have the power or reach of the United States, unpredictability is probably a necessary tool in the toolkit. It's one way in which they can gain an asymmetric advantage over a larger, stronger country. For the world's leading nation, a country that helps hold together peace, prosperity, and stability, to be deeply unpredictable is much more challenging. Richard Nixon actually talked about the crazy man theory of foreign policy, and there are moments for that, but it can't be every moment. And I think that that is what makes the current situation quite challenging.
You've worked for President Obama, for Secretary Clinton, for Vice President Biden. Could you just talk about what it's like to work for them and also what you've learned from observing firsthand their approach to making really difficult decisions?
What's most remarkable about all of President Obama, Vice President Biden, and Secretary Clinton is their capacity to shut out the noise and move forward. Secretary Clinton has the capacity to operate at what I call both the micro and at the macro. She has built an entire life around the proposition that every person ought to be able to live up to their God-given potential. But she can also send me an email that is titled 46 questions, and it will have 46 very specific policy questions that she wants more information on. And then, of course, President Obama, the thing that struck me most about him is we would spend a month working on a foreign policy decision with the smartest people you can imagine sitting around the table. You'd present it to him, he'll have thought about it for 15 minutes, and he will identify 2 ways in which you didn't think of something and 2 ways in which he has a better idea. Almost always. It was eerie and unbelievable.